Hello, my name is Gil Freed, and thank you very much for reading our book, and I hope you learn a lot from the text, and I hope that it makes you that much more of a productive executive, or if you're already currently working in the industry, makes you that much stronger of an analyst, where you can take a look at the data that is generated within your organization and externally and process it more effectively. This is a brief case study as it relates to what I wrote for the sport law section of Sport Analytics. Now, when I started taking a look at this, I want to give you some brief background about myself to help you understand where I come from. My current position is I am a full professor and the department chair of the sport management department at the University of New Haven. Before that, though, I had worked for a number of years as an attorney. I have worked in various areas of professional and collegiate sports. And one of the interesting things that I did was I actually worked for a company that was an analytics company before that became popular. It was a company that produced a publication called Media Sport Business, and I was an analyst as it relates to sport broadcast contracts in the late 80s and early 90s. That was the infancy of the cable boom in terms of sports, and so we had to come up with innovative ways to try to put on an approach to look at what is the value of sport broadcast contracts, what is the best pay-per-view option, what is the best natural option for growth for the broadcasters as well as for the people that own the rights to them. And people were exploring all sorts of different techniques and strategies, whether they wanted to own their own TV station, whether they wanted to go to a regional network, whether they wanted to go to national TV, whether they wanted to go to cable. Those kind of things were some of the ideas that I had to take a look at. So I got very comfortable looking at numbers and taking a look at what those numbers meant and being able to interpret them for others to understand. But what I'm going to talk to you about is how does data influence the sport law area and the law area in general. Now, in the past, when you were trying to prove a point, you often had to rely upon the expert witnesses to come forward because you didn't have the data yourself, you didn't have the information yourself. But now there's so much data out there that anyone can use that to help them understand what's going on. For example, what is the average salaries of employees? What is the average value of a type of injury? Whether it's a workers' comp claim or a negligence claim, you could take a look and say, well, a lost leg is worth 1.2 million or whatever the amount is going to be. There's enough data to be able to process that. And then if you're involved in litigation, then you can use that as a frame of reference to shape your discussions for either settlement or maybe going to trial. So there are a lot of resources available out there for attorneys, whether it's analyzing contracts and what are the potential damages for breach of contract, to what is the amount of money that needs to be paid when you even follow through with a contract, because a contract might be contingent upon sales volume as an example, and then you have to track those sales and what represents discounted sales versus if it's giving away for free, and how does that play into those kind of equations and analysis. So when we start taking a look at data to make an impact in the sport realm, I want to give you one specific issue. The issue involved Brian Stowe. Brian Stowe was a San Francisco Giant fan who was assaulted in the Los Angeles Dodgers parking lot after the Dodgers home opener against San Francisco Giants. Now, you might say, okay, well, people get into fights all the time. And that is true that people can get into fights, but the question becomes, how frequent are those fights? Are they preventable? And so what I want to take a look at is whether or not they were in fact preventable. Because every parking lot where you're going to have a lot of people, there is the potential for assaults or for things to go wrong. But just like there is the potential for things to go wrong, there's also potential for there to be a complete 100% as possible kind of event where there's very few, if any, kinds of assaults. And a lot of it depends upon what the event is. If you're looking at a rap concert versus the opera, the type of crowd you're going to have is significantly different, and the type of security and safety strategies you're going to use is going to be completely different. So I was involved in that litigation as an expert witness for the Stowe family, which is the plaintiff, and their suit against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, the Dodgers were claiming, hey, look at, you know what, we're not responsible. It was an act by another party, or the police should have been there, or other people should have been there. That is their argument, and they're entitled to their argument. The jury did not buy that argument, but the Dodgers are entitled to that. What I want to take a look at and take a focus on is that, can you prove it? And that became the issue in this litigation, is that the Dodgers were basically saying, well, we didn't know that this was going to happen, so we can't be held responsible for it. Our take was, let the numbers do the talking. Instead of having the mouthpiece, which are the lawyers, argue one way or another, let's see what the data showed. And we were able to take a look at the data, and we were able to take a look at not just opening day, we took a look at an entire couple of years worth of data from the Dodger organization, which we subpoenaed and got through the discovery process. And that is information that we were able to analyze. Now, granted, the Dodgers did not give us that data in a clean manner. It was just gobbled up. And it was a jumble of data, lots of information, thousands of pieces of data. So we had to develop our own database to try to analyze each piece of data. And the data could be, for example, whether or not an incident report was filed, whether or not there was an incident report card associated with it. What were those numbers so we can look it up in the future? Who the different people were involved in that issue. Was it a fan? Was it an employee? Things like that. Then we took a look at what time of day it happened. What was the date? Who was the opponent? We took a look at whether or not the person was ejected or not. You know, things like that. And we took a look at a wide variety of different variables for us to take a look and to try to develop whether or not there were in fact any trends. Now, the analysis showed that there were a number of fan-related incidents, and that there were a significant number of incidents, but each one is different. So there are, for example, a large number, hundreds of fans that got disciplined for violating the fan code of conduct. Now, this could be for swearing, using profanity. It could be for throwing items at other people, whatever it might be. Now, depending upon the severity, some people were kicked out of the facility, and others were punished by, being asked not to do what they were doing, and if they did it again, they would be kicked out of the facility, or their tickets could have been revoked. There are a number of different strategies. So some of it was just basic warning, some of it was expulsion, some of it was even arrest. Now, when we start taking a look at that, that's good for us to know how many people got arrested, what were they arrested for, who processed the arrest, and things like that. And that's all information that was beneficial for us. Take a look at the number of assaults. And there were a significant number of assaults, whether it was attacks on other fans, people that were intoxicated attacking others, whether it was people that were drunk and falling on other people, which is an assault. It's not a battery. And that is very important to take a look at, because assault is apprehension of fear of being contacted, versus battery is the actual contact. But if you're someone that's entering the data, you might not know that difference, and you might put something down as an assault when it might actually just be a battery. But we were able to take this information and be able to process it and come up with our numbers and what we felt were the numbers associated with it, which show that there is significant enough criminal conduct of fans that it warrant that the Dodgers had to take proactive measures to ensure the safety of fans. You can't guarantee every fan, but you can make it as safe as possible. Now, the Dodgers would not have argued with the fact that, yeah, they had a responsibility to provide safety for fans. But their approach was to say, look we understand that, and we developed a plan, we hired personnel, so we did our job. And the question becomes, do they in fact do their job? And that's where we're going to start taking a look at, as an example, well, what were their security plans? And so part of their plans included having people in the parking lot after the game ended to provide for safety. And that's important, and I really support that. The problem was that they did not give enough time from when the game ended for the people to go out to the area in a safe manner. Why is that? Well, most teams, what they do is they stagger the release of their employees. So it might be the 8th or 9th inning, they start putting people out in the parking lot So that way when people start exiting, because people sometimes leave a game early, they don't wait till the very end, that there's going to be a security presence there. Now, we're not talking about police presence or anything else. That's a responsibility, but you can't just say the police are responsible for everything. You're the team owner, you're the stadium leasee, or an individual that's responsible for what goes on in the stadium and outside the stadium, so you have to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's. And what happened in this case is that there were a couple off-duty police officers who were supposed to be in the parking lot area where this assault occurred. They did not have enough time from when the game ended to get there, and because of the long trip it would take to get to that area, they actually were notified about the assault by another fan who said, look, there's someone who got really seriously beat up. And that's when they went out to that area they were supposed to be at. Also, we were taking a look at other facts, such as in the year past they had a guard tower that they had put up in that parking lot to be able to monitor it more effectively. This year, even though they were expecting a huge crowd, they did not have that. Now, was it there because they forgot about it? Was it there because it fell through the cracks? Was it there because they're trying to save money and not put up that tower? We will never know probably what the answer is to that. But that becomes part of the analysis. So we take a look at all this data, and that helps us develop a story that we're able to use in front of the jury, and the jury felt that the Dodgers had some responsibility. And in fact, they awarded $13 million to the Stowe family in response to their perceived lack of diligence on the part of the Dodgers to provide a safe environment as possible. Now, what lessons can we learn from this process? It's important to document. You really have to document everything, because during litigation, documents are going to be processed. Even if you put it in through the internet, you have to make sure it's processed effectively. For example, one of the incidents was considered a traffic violation, and it was a husband trying to run over their wife in the parking lot. And instead of calling it what it is, a crime, they call it, as fan interference in the parking lot. So does that tell the right story? Because you're not trying to just tell the story for litigation. You're trying to help yourself, that you can look at this data and it help you prepare for the future. Also, one of the assaults and battery on one of the employees involved a fan groping a female officer, and it was called fan disturbance instead of assault or battery, whatever it could have been considered. So you have to make sure that the data is entered in correctly, and that you're collecting the right data. So example, they collected the time, but I would rather see not just the time, when during the game. Was it after the game? Was it during the 7th inning, before that? Because that will help dictate your analysis to see, well, are there more assaults when the game ends and people are leaving the facility and they might be more intoxicated, or some other issue might be at play? That'll be important to know, and that might not be seen if you just have a date and time stamp without looking at where it is during the game. What suggestions do you have for students about data in your discipline? I'd say document, document, document. A lot of attorneys say don't document, we don't want to see it. Well, in this day and age where it's so easy to take photographs and things like this, I encourage people to document as much as possible, and then analyze whatever it is that you have documented. Spend time every year taking a look and trying to plug through the numbers and take a look and see what story do those numbers tell you. Because they could tell you quite a bit. They could tell you about your safety practices. It's something that you could bring back to your insurance company and say, look, we reduced our injury rate by X percentage. And these are the strategies that we use. And because of that, we want to reduce how much we owe for purchasing insurance in the future. That is a solid argument, and it's based by facts. And when you can base an argument by facts, you're more likely to have success. Thank you very much for listening to my discussion. I hope you have a wonderful semester or a wonderful year, whatever it might be. Take care. Bye-bye.